For our next adventure into the interactive world of Bakugan, well, we're gonna take a step backwards.
Let's be real here, Bakugan video games have always been a bit of an anomaly. Never before with the release of Battle Brawlers and Defenders of the Core did fans think they would be able to pull it off. Battle Brawlers, we got a quality Bakugan simulator with an interactive engaging RPG, and Defenders of the Core, we got a decent fighting game. Usually licensed properties turned into video games would not be so good, but somehow Activision managed to pull out some very decent games. Now, almost a decade later, with nostalgia being a very high thing, Bakugan returned with a reboot, and there has been speculation on a video game adaptation, with it officially being announced at Nintendo Treehouse in April, called Bakugan Champions of Vestroia. The news resulted in Bakugan getting on trending page on Twitter, and the reception to the trailer was expected, with a lot of the general audience reaction being unaware that Bakugan even came back in the first place, and has been around for over a year. Goes to show how many people check the toy aisle, huh? But regardless, this game for us fans was something we've been waiting for a long time, and it's fantastic that Spin Master delivered with a game developed by WayForward, famous for games like The Scorpion King, Sword of Osiris, and Adventure Time, Hey Ice King, Why'd You Steal Our Garbage? At least that's what I think, right? So, is Bakugan Champions of Vestroia as good as we all anticipated it to be? Okay, before we get started, I actually bought the Deluxe edition of the game. The Deluxe edition costs $10 more, but you get a Ultimate Dragonoid figure, a card, a gate card, and 2 cores. At 1000 B power and gives plus 6 damage on Green Fist, making him at best 1110, he's actually a very competitively viable Bakugan. And the figure is not really special though, it's just Armored Alliance Dragonoid core repainted and different B power. I like the gold on it though, which is what they would be doing with gold paint on other Bakugan toys throughout Season 2. I just can't believe they pay Walt $60 for a competitive Bakugan this good. Talk about pay to win. Okay, now let's get into the game. Just like the previous 2 Bakugan games, you start the game by creating your own character, but unlike the previous 2, you actually get to select your gender this time. Wow, already being progressive. I did a first impression video on this game a while back, and I said that the game just doesn't pick up at the first few hours of playing, and I still stand by that, but afterwards the game actually picks up and gets very exciting as you keep going. You and your friends discover Bakugan, there is an evil company called Parasol trying to hurt Bakugan for profit, go stop them, that's it. Wow, an evil company threatening to abuse creatures for their own gain? Where have we heard that before? As you progress through the game, you collect more Bakugan and train them to improve them, with the highest evolution being Diamond. Wow, training creatures to evolve them so they can be better use? Again, where have we heard that before? Okay, Pokemon clone jokes aside, the premise of your game is actually a very decent one. It's simple and something that your players can get behind. And since this is an RPG, there are side quest missions that you can do to either gain more items, Bakugan, money, and so forth. Sometimes the side quests range from simple battles, collecting coffee cups, or being an Uber Eats delivery boy. Since this game is open world and there are a lot of places to explore, side quests really encourage you to do just that. But sometimes the side missions are so annoyingly long or difficult and the rewards doesn't seem worth it in the end. Don't even get me started on the main story as well. The characters are largely forgettable and there's just a lot of cliches. Even the Bakugan get lines too, and it's only the Bakugan that's just center your team of 3. Unlike the previous games, there's no voice acting done here. It's just reading dialogue. It's not too big of a deal, but it's still kind of a step backwards. They made my character such a Mary Sue with no character or conflict. I'm just so boring. I will say though, Champions of Vestroia does have a better story than Defenders of the Core, and it's just almost on par with Battle Brawlers. The thing is, there's no character work done in Champions of Vestroia. They made the characters all as one-dimensional as possible. Dan from the TV series makes snapshot cameo appearances teaching you the game, but that's it. The music for this game is literally just recycled audio from the TV series, which is a shame because the soundtrack was one of the great things from the previous games. I guess composing a new soundtrack wasn't in the budget, huh? Nobody from the TV series makes a proper appearance in this game either, which is weird because Leah is also on the cover of this game, but she's nowhere to be seen, not even in the same role as Dan. False advertising much? but overall you still do things to try and stop the company and also try to become the #1 brawler at the same time. I would like it where Dan or one of the awesome brawlers becomes the absolute final boss of the game, but overall this journey is fine. I clocked my playtime at 20 to 24 hours with the side missions, so at least the content is there. Now, what about the overall gameplay? Okay, let's look at the main selling point of this game, the Bakugan battles. You run around the stage collecting Baku cores to increase the energy of your Bakugan for them to use attacks. Some Baku cores grant more energy than others, sometimes you can use the Baku Gear cores painted in orange, we'll get back to those later, and your attacks are 4 specific ability cards you either acquire from the story or buy from the shop. Some of the abilities are named after actual cards from the real-life TCG, but instead of using PNG images, they just use badly drawn images and call it a day. There is a team attack too, which happens when you fully charge all 3 of your Bakugan, but it's slow, so why bother? It's an instant knockout if your opponent is like under 600 health or something. The original games did the cards just fine, I don't know what the problem is here. The Baku Gear your Bakugan get after evolving from their base form, most of the time it's just defensive passives. Why can't you just make it a charged ability where after getting enough Baku Gear Baku cores, you press a button and it unleashes a strong attack? Did you guys just not research this? Clearly this battle system is supposed to be a replication of the TV show, and admittedly, it does get more interesting as time goes on. There is a little bit of strategy involved in this. Sometimes it's best to wait until your bigger cores appear. Maybe you want to grab as much smaller ones as you can to get a quick attack in. Sometimes you run in front of your opponent and steal a core they're going for. It's an interesting idea. But in terms of controlling your character, it's a little too sluggish. The detection when you pick up cores are so picky. I got screwed a few times because my character won't pick up a core that's literally right on their feet. There are brawler upgrades you can purchase from the store like magnetism, running faster, or just running through a core to pick it up without throwing it, but in terms of controlling the character itself to try and pick up a core, it's trash. The stunning is my favorite though. The Bakugan themselves just stay in the background and sometimes just slap each other until you give them something to do. While the Bakugan do look nice, they don't do anything else. Now, okay, this is not such a big deal since the focus on this game is the Bakugan, but I feel like the brawls just go on a little too slow in my opinion. Every time I get into a brawl, there are some times where I'm just dreading it. Especially when an enemy has the same stunning ability as me, we just end up stunning each other and then nothing happens for like 7 seconds. It really drags the game too long. Sticky Feet still sucks a whole lot. There are also some times during the attack cutscenes where the frame rate drops and there's just a lot of lag. At the very least, that every brawl you participate in, it grants experience points to your Bakugan to help them evolve. Their evolutions are literally just repainted versions of the base forms. Everyone that watches or plays Bakugan knows that that's not Maximus Nilius. The other side of the game, the open world RPG side, has its problems as well. In order to look at the map of your area and know where to go or what to do, you have to press the X button every time, and there's like a 3-second delay before it pops up. There's no quest log, progress bar, or money counter that just stays on the screen. So when I'm doing the quests that force me to collect stuff, I can't keep count of my progress, so I have to keep checking to see if my quest will change to tell me if I'm done. It's extremely a huge waste of time. Just keep everything on the screen, there's plenty of space. There! And also, there's sometimes no indicator like an exclamation point over NPC's heads to tell me that there's a person I need to talk to. The directions tell me the name of a person I'm supposed to go talk to as if I'm supposed to already know this person. It's very infuriating sometimes. And throughout the time you run around, there are shiny stuff you can pick up. Sometimes it's a new Bakugan to add to your collection, and oftentimes it's 150 B coins. I'd say that's a pretty exciting time. But considering how expensive everything is in the store, 150 seems very low. There is an option in the store to purchase Evos for your Bakugan, but they are extremely expensive. However, I can forgive that since it's clear they want you to train your Bakugan naturally. I'll give them this though, the open world concept was unique since that's not been done before in any of the other games. Defenders of the Core was close to that, but it didn't tackle all of the qualifications necessary to be called an open world game. I love open world games like Jak and Daxter, so when Bakugan comes along with an open world concept, I was more than excited. In terms of execution though, I think you missed by a core or two.
Okay, this is not just do that.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
It definitely seems like I'm praising the graphics here, and they are really good to look at, but in terms of it being a reboot to introduce a newer audience to something old, sorry, I'm really not impressed.
As a fan of the Bakugan franchise, this game really was less than satisfactory, that I felt that it could have been better, with more thought, research, and direction. The Bakugan roster feels very limited too, with a lot of Bakugan not even making the cut, not even very staple Bakugan like Matanoid or Fangzor. Heck, my precious most favorite Bakugan Hydronoid didn't even make it.
No Hydronoid! Licky what?
How do you make a Bakugan game with Dragonoid and not include Hydronoid? That's like a law. Yes, Defenders of the Core didn't have Hydronoid either and had Hades instead, but Hades was close enough since it's supposed to be a robot version of Alpha Hydronoid. There is just so much more that could have been done to make this game at least great with a little more time. This game was announced back in April and was in development since January, so this really does seem rushed. And speaking of rushed, this game on release had very major problems. There were bugs and glitches all over the place. The game soft-locked itself on the Parasol HQ stage or final tournament stage so that you couldn't continue to progress, and there were many reports of people's save data being lost. In fact, Negative Legend got completely screwed out of the Champions of Vestroia Invitational Tournament because his save data was erased before the tournament started. It was absolutely a travesty what happened to him. Props to him though for still participating. The bugs and glitches absolutely made the game completely unplayable at launch. Thankfully, they rolled out a patch to fix all of these issues a week after the invitational event, so at least it became playable again, but it really upsets me that these days of modern games, they are just pushed out without triple checking everything and expect patches to solve everything, and unfortunately, Champions of Vestroia was no exception. And in the same patch, they also nerfed the Sword Barrage ability due to it being way too strong at launch. Though the change was not listed in the patch notes. If you're going to change something, it's best to let everyone know all of your changes. I'm just saying. Admittedly, I didn't have many glitches except this one where I can't pick up this obtainable object and still can't even after beating the game. It still bothers me to this day. I swear it mocks me every time I come to it. It's very clear that they are trying to target young kids with the game, especially young kids that watch a TV series, hence the combat system, and to keep the TCG players happy, they reference the actual cards in the attacks. As a fan of both though, I can honestly say it's very obnoxious. Everything I've said in terms of the glitches, the lack of thought in the gameplay, and questionable decisions make this game kind of feel unfinished. Truth is, I don't know if this is the fault of WayForward for not doing enough research on the source material, or Spin Master for not giving enough of a budget or material to work with. And based on the timeline, it seems they wanted this game to launch to tie into the Armored Alliance season. Who can really say? It's all speculation on my part. It just seems really unfortunate that the previous two games, more specifically Battle Brawlers, was an absolute classic, only for them to swing and miss with this one. I don't hate it though, you get better as you keep playing, just watching Bakugan fight is a simple pleasure in life. The graphics are good to look at, open world is cool, and unlike the previous games, there is online multiplayer now that you can go test your Bakugan skills against other people or your friends, and that is fantastic. I do also like the selection of attacks, and there are strategizing involved in it. Oh, but what about one of the main selling points? The return of Leonidas. Leonidas was a popular Bakugan you get paired with in the original game that never saw a physical toy release. He returns only in this reboot game, not a toy release still. I guess the gods are still keeping him fable, huh? Leonidas is the only auraless Bakugan in this game. The pros, he can use any faction of attacks. The cons, he's vulnerable to all faction of attacks. He's not terrible, but his design actually doesn't look as good as the previous one. Also, you don't get him until near the end of the game. But hey, he's back, so they weren't lying there.
Now, it may seem like I'm nitpicking too much, but as a genuine fan of the franchise, me loving this reboot, and this game is freaking $50, can you really blame me?
The reception to this game has been heavily mixed, and it's very easy to see why. I love what the original games did, staying faithful to the fans of the franchise while giving something solid. While Champions of Vestroia, there were some very questionable decisions and also lack of research, and it clearly shows. While there were still some things that made it decent enough, it just doesn't feel like Bakugan. The toy figures don't at the very least appear to promote the toys. In hindsight, it doesn't seem so obvious, but I played those original games not that long ago, so my perspective is a bit different. Honestly, this game is not so bad, but it's not good either. It's definitely not going to win Game of the Year, that's for sure, but I wouldn't recommend using this game to introduce new people into the franchise. Hopefully in the future there are updates that will add more Bakugan to the game and maybe more story missions, but honestly it doesn't look likely. Way Forward had their chance and it seems like they're already moving on to develop the new Ruby game. This game was $50, $60 for the Deluxe Edition, and the game definitely is not reflective of that price. If you're gonna charge your game for this much, I definitely have to have high expectations for it. Maybe if the game was $20 or $30, maybe that would be worth it, but for now, I think it's best to just move on. Us fans will have to keep waiting for a faithful adaptation of a video game of the reboot. If you want a good Bakugan game to play, just play Battle Brawlers.
So that concludes our look into the trio of Bakugan games. Champions of Vestroia here is decent, but it's not good and it's way far from perfect. I feel like they had a very decent idea, but the rush job and the lack of research and direction may have squandered it. Who really knows? That's just what I see. And maybe in the future we'll get a rebooted version of Defenders of the Core, maybe, I'm not sure. But anyways, let me know what you guys thought of Champions of Vestroia. Let me know in the comments down below. I always want to hear what you guys think. Support BakuTalk by pressing the thumbs up and give us a subscribe for more awesome Bakugan content. I've been Haru and thank God for rapid fire. Bye.